welcome back to Retro Podcast for the third week of Pride Special. We have today Angelo Thomas visiting. And Angelo, how has your summer been so far?
It's been all right. It's been hot, but it's been all right. Can't complain.
I'm with you on that. It's where I am, it's 90 degrees. Are you doing anything special for Pride Month?
Can't say I'm doing anything special. I was at the Pride parade over the weekend, which was a good time. My first time going in a few years, so that was nice. A ton of people there. It was a really good time. It's about it though.
And when you say it was the first time in a few years, was that like before COVID or was it like after COVID?
Yeah, yeah. Last time I went was 2019, and then they didn't do it in 2020. And in 2021, I had COVID when the Pride was going on, and I just haven't been really since then. But yeah, it was really cool to go back and perfect weather for it. It's great.
And it's been over a year since the pandemic was declared over, which feels insane that it's been over a year. How does it feel?
For the pandemic to be over,
Hmm.
I think it's good. I mean, I know for me, the pandemic really, I don't know, took a toll on me in terms of my ability to get out and connect with people. I think connection is really important to me. I think as a filmmaker, I think being able to have, you know, I don't know, I made a couple of films during COVID and definitely impacted both the making of the films and the release of the films. So yeah, I'm glad that's sort of in our rearview mirror, hopefully for good. You never know, but hopefully it's over for good.
Of course. And speaking of making films during the pandemic, you wrote a book called The Incredible Jake Parker and then also did a film adaptation of it, which was released during the pandemic before the medicine was released. Now, what were the ups and downs trying to get the premiere going? Like, were there any struggles?
Yeah, oh for sure. I mean, so Jake Parker was my senior thesis film in college. And the pandemic started March 2020. Basically, we went on spring break and never came back. And so I was relying on the equipment, the computers and things like that at school to edit the film. I was deep in post-production and was, doing it at school. And so even just the, lack of having access to the technology was very challenging because I didn't have a computer at the time that was strong enough to edit a 4K feature film. So that was a challenge right off the bat. I managed to get around that, was gifted a lovely Mac, thankfully. But in terms of distribution, it totally derailed, what I was going to do. I had plans for a theatrical release in Columbus, Chicago, and Milwaukee, and tickets had already gone on sale, actually, maybe like end of February, I think tickets went on sale 2020. And so, of course, had to cancel those plans. It was going to premiere in May of 2020. And I was super bummed about that just because I was very excited to have had the opportunity to have it play in multiple cities. But, the show must go on. So I ended up having a small premiere at Studio 35 here in Columbus in August of 2020. It was one of the few theaters that was even willing to have any type of event at that time. I mean, that was still pretty early days, the pandemic, when you think about it. Theaters were very much not back yet at that point. But was grateful to get to see it on the big screen and experience it with some of the people who worked on it and family and friends and stuff like that. And then did a very limited release on Vimeo, their on-demand platform at the time. And in the years since then, I've been able to get it on Apple TV and Amazon and Tubi and some of these other streaming platforms, and really grateful to be able to still get it out there and for people to still be discovering it all these years later.
Mhm. And do you think that since movie theaters are back open and everyone's going to the movies again, do you think that we're going to see more people going to theaters, or do you think we're going to see more streaming in the near future with the industry?
I would hope both. I mean, I think there's no question that streaming has changed the way people go to the movies. I mean, we just had Inside Out 2 open over the weekend with huge box office numbers that were blew projections out of the water. But we've also seen a lot of films underperform since COVID. So I think audiences are not as willing to go to the theater as they used to be. I think it has to be more of a surefire bet. They have to know that they're getting something that's going to be high quality and worth their time and money to actually go out to the theater. And so I think, even if you just look at the data, I think it's something like people used to go to the movies maybe once a month. And now I think average uh, moviegoers are going once every 2 or 3 months. So I think there's definitely been a difference, especially with streaming prices going up. People are spending so much just on the content they have at home that um, they would rather watch the content that they're already paying for than shell out money to take your family and get popcorn and do the whole thing. That can be a really expensive outing. So I think it's definitely changing, but I think both will find their footing and will be able to coexist long term.
And have you seen Inside Out 2 yet?
I did. I saw it over the
Is it
weekend.
good?
I thought it was really good. I think it is as good as the first one. I think it works kind of seamlessly with the first one. I think that's the best kind of sequel, is if it feels like it is just, picks up right where the other left off and just kind of works really well in tandem with it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but it is on my list. I did hear that Maya Hawke plays the character Anxiety in the film.
And she's great in Inside Out too. I haven't
Oh
seen her in
yeah,
anything else, but she was really good. I really liked what she did with that character.
but of course that was before she started really getting high with her music career. I mean,
Right.
yes, it was her acting career, but that was before he did. Now, it's been 5 years since The Incredible Jake Parker came out. What were the memories that you remember working on that project?
Well, it's been 4 years, or almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years in August. Uh, right? Yeah, 2020. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it was just the best learning experience I could have asked for. I think the 2 weeks that I spent in Louisiana shooting the film in particular, I don't think the experience that I gained from that, like, is just couldn't have gotten it through any film class or any other way besides actually doing it. Like, I think actually being on a set and having to direct a film with no real experience. Like, I just think that is what makes you a director, and that is where you learn. And it was a very low budget film, scrappy production. We shot it actually in about 9 days. Uh, so I don't think there's any better way to learn than to just put yourself right in the ring and figure it out. And there's so many challenges that came up, so many like fires to put out, as is typical on any low budget film. And um, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. I think it was really important, and also, like, as challenging as it was at times, I think was a good reminder of, like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing and this is what I want to do forever, even though it's challenging and sometimes uh, doesn't always feel rewarding. I think it is just like what I have to do to stay sane.
Understood. And we have spoke about this before, but you were telling me that when we first met, you told me that it was before you made the film and it came out, it was originally intended to be a film, but you couldn't get made, so instead you wrote as a book, and then you finally got some audience to notice it, and then that's when you made the movie. Like, what were the biggest struggles before you wrote the book version? What were the biggest struggles of trying to get the script off the ground?
I mean, writing the script came super easily because it was very closely based on my own life and what I had just gone through myself in terms of my eating disorder recovery and things like that. So writing the script is very fast, but it's sort of the thing where, like, you have a script and you're really happy with it, and then you're like, now what? Like, at first, like, finishing the script feels like the goalpost. That feels like, you know, what you're racing towards. Then you get there, and it's like, but I really want to make this. Like, I'm not somebody who, like, will write something and just, like, will let it be and then move on and write something else. Like, I really wanted to make it. And so it was challenging to kind of come to terms with the fact that it is hard to get funding for a feature film as a 19, 20-year-old at the time, with no real experience. That was really challenging, but I, wanted to get the story out there in some way. So a book felt like the easiest way to do that, because self-publishing is pretty easy these days.
Mhm.
So I was able to get it out through the book and then had the opportunity to make it into a film a year or two later. So it all worked out.
Yeah. Well, hey, you don't know what the future holds.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny because my a recent book that just came out called Orlando Monster. It's a horror book. It was intended to be a screenplay first, and so before A24 started doing their own content, A24 uh, used to allow artists to submit scripts what's the word I'm looking for? Unsolicited scripts. They used to allow artists to submit unsolicited scripts, but then when A24 was getting noticed and then it got popular, they no longer allowed
Right.
unsolicited scripts. So it was too late to to submit the script. So instead made it as a book, and now it's being put into a stop motion animation film. Production's been put on hold at the moment, but we're still working.
That's cool. That's exciting.
Yeah. And what is the biggest advice you would pass on to future filmmakers?
Um, I would I'd say have something to say in whatever you're making. I think it's great to make things because it's fun or because it's a genre that you're drawn to, or um, you know, just it's great to make films for the fun of it. But I think what really sets it apart, no matter what genre it is if there's something to say, if there's something deeper in there. I think every good film has a piece of the filmmaker in it. And again, that can be in any genre. Look at what Jordan Peele has done in horror. Like I think um, there's certainly some, a place for a super commercial film that's just made to make money or, for that just to be the end game. I think there's a place for that. But yeah, I don't know. I would say really think about what you want to say and what you can bring from yourself. It doesn't mean your films have to be autobiographical, but how can you put yourself into those characters and make them more real? And how can you um, make the film have a deeper meaning beyond whatever the surface level plot is? I think that is when it really elevates your work. And I think as a filmmaker, that's when it's more motivating. That's when um, I think there's just sort of an intangible quality when a film has that deeper connection to the person who's making it.
Understood. Very good. And are there any films you're currently working on at the moment?
Yes, I'm working on a short film called Somewhere, which is a very grounded take on the Wizard of Oz. I would say it is an original story that uses the Wizard of Oz as a framework, is the way that I would
Nice.
describe it. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's an adaptation of the Wizard of Oz or a remake at all. But I started writing it as a feature and probably about a year and a half ago, and really struggled to get it to feature length. Like 90 pages is what I was going for, and just could not get it there. I had the story all fleshed out and I knew what all the beats were, but it just was not amounting to 90 pages. And I had a couple of people look at it, and I had someone who was working on it with me a little bit, and finally came to the realization that like this is not a feature, it's a short. And at first I was a little disappointed because everybody wants to make a feature, right? It's more fun. It's a bigger deal. It's, whatever. But it was about 45 pages at the time, and I brought it down to about 20, I think it's at 23. And it's so much stronger than it was at 45 pages. And so I'm proud to have made that decision. I think it's going to be a really strong short film, and like it has a lot of me in it. I think it is in some ways my most personal film, but I think that feels like it's true with every film that I make. Every film feels more personal, even though they get further and further away from being autobiographical, which is interesting. Like my first one was pretty close to my real life, and they've kind of strayed further, but there's still a lot of me in there, in some ways. So I'm really excited about it, hoping to get a grant to make it. Would need about 10,000 to make it, which is a lot. I could try to fund it myself. I funded my last couple of films by myself, but there are a lot of great grant opportunities here in Columbus, especially through
Mhm.
GCAC. So hoping to get a grant to make it and hopefully shoot it here in the next, I don't know. I don't want to put a timetable on it because I don't want to jinx anything, but hopefully soon I can make it. It'll definitely, it'll be my next one. I feel like I always when I finish one film, I always know what the next one is going to be. Like it's just sort of a natural progression of what I want to do. So this will be the next one, and hopefully here soon we'll be able to get it underway.
Well, even when it comes to fiction writing, you have to start with what you know. That's the important part.
Right.
You have to write what you know. And yeah, speaking of short films, I have a short film at the moment, and I didn't think this would ever happen, but hey, you never know what the future holds. But in this short film, it's going to be done in the UK, and
Hmm.
working with two British actors. One of them I actually unexpectedly became friends with, and she was an actress that I grew up watching when I was a kid. And my nana's from the UK, and so she's introduced me to all these BBC comedies that are over there. Some of them she doesn't watch because they're too crude for her, but they're hilarious. Like
Hmm.
there's this one show called Coupling, and Kate Isett, who plays one of the characters from Coupling, she was on the podcast this past season, and Coupling is the BBC version of Friends, but it is a lot cruder than Friends are, and nothing is censored. Because of course it's
Hmm.
British television, nothing is censored. Aimed up for a project, a 10-minute short film that we're trying to sell to a studio, hoping a studio would buy it. I mean, nobody has written a check yet, but when that day approaches, it happens when it happens.
Right. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. And we are coming down to the end of our interview, and we have two famous podcast questions. The
Okay.
first one is, do you happen to have a favorite retro product?
Retro product.
Mhm.
Can you give me an example?
Usually anything from 2000s, 80s, 90s. Usually
Hmm.
comes, it could either be a DVD, a video game, VHS, a toy.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, I love that question. I do collect VHS tapes.
nice.
Just sort of movies that I grew up watching. Like I am pretty selective. I don't just go out and grab any VHS tape. That's sort of been my thing lately. I have this little Mickey Mouse TV that has like a DVD and VCR attached to it that I always wanted as a kid, but never got. Have it now as an adult, and it works, and it's amazing. Also into GameCube lately, which I played growing up, and have recently kind of fallen back in love with. So I'd say those are my two.
Nice. GameCube, that sounds very familiar. Is it like a Rubik's Cube, or is it a device?
No, it's a Nintendo console that was
Oh, okay.
before the Wii. So it was GameCube and then Wii and then Switch.
I remember.
So it's like I'm a little older than you, I think. So it's like, early 2000s is when it was, around
How old are you, if I'm allowed to ask?
26. Uh,
24.
oh, okay. Not that much
It's
of a
not
difference
bad.
then. Yeah, 2 years.
And speaking of VHS tapes, are you looking forward to the movie Maxine that comes out next month?
I guess so. I haven't seen the other movies that are related to that one. But I keep seeing the trailer for it whenever I've been in the movies a few times recently and keep seeing the trailer and it looks very intriguing. And there are like a bunch of actors that pop up in the trailer that are familiar. So I might check it out.
It's amazing how for like a really well, because the film itself, it's made to look like it came out in the 80s. Even though it came out today, it's made to look like it came out in the 80s, and it has that V VHS nostalgic. But it's
Mhm.
amazing how many, like we said, how many big names that pop up in the movie, especially for a small indie film. But hey, it's all about who you know and who's interested.
Right, for
Yeah.
sure.
And recently, Mia Goth got into some illegal trouble lately. The actress who plays Maxine, she got in trouble well, she's being sued at the moment for assaulting someone on a movie set. What was your reaction when you heard the news?
This is the first time I'm hearing the news.
Oh, please forgive me. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, I hate to hear it. I mean, I'm sure there are two sides to every story. Things happen. She's very talented from what I hear. I don't know if I've actually seen her in anything. Um, so hate to hear it, but things like that happen. I mean, even on some of the sets that I've worked on, I mean, it gets, especially on smaller budget productions, oftentimes that means there are longer hours. There are fewer, kind of like protocols in place. It's sort of like the Wild West. I had an actor who was drinking throughout you may have heard this story before, who was drinking throughout the day, became increasingly more intoxicated,
Oh,
and potentially using other substances while on set. Like it's hard, whereas if you're on like a big studio production, I would imagine like the actors have their handlers and it's a lot more organized. Whereas when you're on a smaller film, like yeah, it's the Wild West. Like there's so many horror stories from Jake Parker in particular along those lines that like
I'm
it
I'm curious.
happens.
I'm curious to hear those stories. If I'm allowed to ask, what are those stories in particular?
Yeah, we had a makeup artist. Our one makeup artist quit halfway through. She had a really bad drug problem, which was sad. Addiction has been a big part of my family, and so I can certainly empathize with that. Um, but yeah, just quit and randomly, couldn't take it anymore. We had our like main, I'm not sure what her credit was, but basically was our transportation, taking actors from their hotel to set every day. She packed up and moved to California spontaneously halfway through the trip. So we had no one to transport our actors. We had other people like our line producer who was able to kind of pick up the slack or whatever. But and then that drunk actor, I mean, he showed up to hair and makeup that morning and clearly had not read the script. Like he had no idea what we were doing. And I was not local to Louisiana, so I leaned a lot on my producer and other people who were there to kind of organize things. And yeah, having to explain to your actor, this is day 2 of filming, by the way, like having to explain to him in the morning, like who his character is and what the film is about, extremely challenging. So if you watch the film, I'm not going to say which character it is because I don't want to put the actor on the spot, but like I think you can tell is what I'll say. Like it's not hard to see. Like he did not know his lines. It was just a nightmare. And we actually ended up
Oh
we
my
didn't get
God.
to shoot all of his scenes with him. And so we ended up having to rewrite some of the film at the last minute to the scenes that we didn't get to in order to still have it work. Like it was just a lot. But yeah, again, like that's what happens when you're on sort of a scrappy, low budget film. Is like you're gonna run into that kind of stuff, and there aren't really a lot of guardrails in place. So
That just sounds like you were dealing with a real life version of Billy Bob Thornton's character from Bad Santa.
yeah, very. That is a very good comparison.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the drinking part, yes, the drinking and swearing part, yes, but thank goodness you didn't experience him doing anything else that we can't say on actual podcast.
Right. For sure.
It's one of the greatest comedies that have ever existed in cinematic history, and that one scene where I won't say it because it's inappropriate, but John Ritter knows what he did and he catches him for what he did, and he's like, yeah, well, even still, I think it's best if we find someone else who's interested in the position. And Billy, of course, already knows he's been caught, and he immediately switches the subject.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's been a while since I've seen it.
I watched it last year for the first time. I was dead laughing.
Mhm. It's
Yeah.
funny.
But it just makes me think, like, I'm curious to know, like, what was it about the guy that upset Mia Goth that made her, lose it if she did lose it, because
Mhm.
you never know what's true or false. But I'm just curious to know, what did the guy do that made her, really lose it?
Yeah, there's no telling.
And for our very last question is, my mother wants to know, do you happen to have a favorite board game?
Ooh, I like that question. I'm a big board game fan, so the answer is yes, but it's also hard to choose. Um, Not quite a board game, but I like Bananagrams, which is really similar to Scrabble. I like it because I'm really good at it. It's just like tiles and letters, and you have to make words. Like, I think it's just a nice little exercise for the brain. If I ever get dementia or something, that's how I'm going to try to keep myself smart. Like, I always think about that. Like, I just think it's a really good one. I loved Monopoly growing up, so I did a lot with my grandma, but it's just such a long game that as an adult, like, does not seem like something I would enjoy. Um, yeah, I love headbands, as stupid as it is. I don't know if that counts as a board game. My like in-laws like are obsessed with board games, so there are lots Dutch Blitz, a lot of card games. Um, yeah, big fan.
Very cool. Uh, Something new I learned. Angela, thank you again for joining today's episode, and stay cool because it's supposed to, the weather's going to get really intense in the next few weeks.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Very nice to chat with you, and look forward to seeing your films and everything you've got going on. Sounds like you've got some exciting stuff coming down the pipe.
Hey, you as well. I'm really looking forward to see this Wizard of Oz style short film when you have it finished.
Thank you.